Welcome to Mickey, Marvel, and More, Disney news, commentary, and opinion. From theme parks to Thanos and from Skywalker to Skyliner, my family and I will discuss it all. So let's go!
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Hello, Mark here, and welcome to another episode of Mickey, Marvel, and More. Thanks so much for being here and continuing to support my family and I on our little podcast journey. All right, so you've been saving, organizing, and planning for your latest Disney theme park vacation for months, and now it's finally here. You arrive at Disneyland or Walt Disney World Resort, and boom! Okay, that might have been a bit much, but you get the idea. So you arrive there and you run into a problem. It could be anything. A missing reservation, you've forgotten something, or Mother Nature doesn't cooperate. It can really be anything. Believe me, it's happened to my family many times over the years as we've traveled to the Disney theme parks. And that's what today's family chat is going to be all about. In this episode, Laura and I are going to sit down around the virtual table and share some of our Disney disasters and let you know what kind of problems we ran into and how we dealt with them. Believe it or not, it may not seem like it at the time, but it's never the end of the world. But before we get to that, how about a little news from in and around the Disneyverse?
I can do this all day.
Well, believe it or not, the spring and movie summer season is upon us. I know it seems early, but with the release of Captain America Brave New World over the weekend, the spring and summer movies are upon us, and for Marvel, the stakes couldn't be higher. For the last several years, Disney and Marvel have had a bit of a rough patch. Since the release of Avengers Endgame in 2019, Marvel seems to have lost its way. With a few exceptions, Marvel Spider-Man No Way Home being the brightest standout, a lot of the post-Endgame Marvel films haven't connected with fans. And it didn't help that Marvel and Disney had to do an about-face with their storyline involving Kang the Conqueror due to Jonathan Majors' continuing legal troubles. They eventually had to drop him as their latest big bad. Their biggest hit in quite some time, which was also their only film last year, Deadpool and Wolverine, was huge. That film also showed us that they're not completely done with the multiverse. And with the release of the first trailer for the Fantastic Four: The First Steps last week, it kind of gives us a sneak peek into what some of those multiverse shenanigans might actually be. The new Fantastic Four film was clearly set in a 1950s, 1960s sort of universe. But which timeline? We know that the Fantastic Four are definitely going to be a part of the next two Avengers films because their biggest villain, Doctor Doom, played by the returning Robert Downey Jr., is clearly going to be featured. Also, a quick shot in the trailer reveals Mr. Fantastic writing on a chalkboard that features a lot of math and a drawing of a time portal. So are they part of the sacred timeline, or are they from someplace else? I guess that will remain to be seen. Hopefully, Disney and Marvel can do right by Marvel's first family. Also released last week was the first full trailer for the Thunderbolts, basically Marvel's answer to Suicide Squad. The movie looks to be full of action and hopefully a lot of fun. Let's just say I'm being cautiously optimistic about these films. So check out these latest trailers in the show notes and let us know what you think. Also in the show notes, I'll have an article that lists everything Marvel plans to release on the big screen and on Disney Plus in the coming months. Captain America Brave New World is out now. The Thunderbolts will be released on May 2nd, and the Fantastic Four: The First Steps, well, that one will be released to the world on July 25th. One way or another, it's going to be a big spring and summer for Marvel.
Will somebody get this big walking carpet out of my way?
Disneyland's annual Big Star Wars celebration event, the Season of the Force, is right around the corner, and they have a lot of big new things planned for this year's celebration. First up is a new nightly projection show that's called Shadows of Memory, a Skywalker saga. They promise to transform the spires of Batuu near the Millennium Falcon with some of the greatest moments in galactic history involving the Skywalker saga. Sort of in connection with the projection show is a brand new character encounter, a first for either version of Galaxy's Edge. They've released a promo with a shadowy visitor wearing a distinct looking hooded Jedi robe, placing a black gloved hand on top of R2D2's dome. It's pretty clear that this is going to be Luke Skywalker. Assuming this is true, that is huge for Galaxy's Edge, because neither of the Galaxy's Edge locations in Walt Disney World or Disneyland have ever featured any of the big three characters from the original trilogy, Luke, Han, or Leia. In the past, they have only featured sequel trilogy characters, the only exception being the Mandalorian and Grogu from the Disney Plus Mandalorian TV show. Up until now, Galaxy's Edge has only focused on the modern Star Wars properties. For the life of me, I will never understand why they didn't make this Tatooine, because they could have involved all of the films if they did that. But that's a conversation for another episode. They will also be bringing back the very popular fireworks show, Fire of the Rising Moons, that will be staged on select nights above the spires in the skies of Batuu. Over in Sabi's workshop, where you get to build your own lightsaber, they will also be adding scraps that have been scavenged by different pirates throughout the galaxy. Outside of Galaxy's Edge, they will also be bringing back the Hyperspace Mountain overlay to Space Mountain. All of these things sound amazing. I only hope that someday all of this cool stuff will find its way down to Walt Disney World's version of Galaxy's Edge over at Hollywood Studios. Disneyland always gets the cool stuff first. Be sure to check out the show notes for all of the information regarding the event, as well as descriptions of some of the merchandise they'll be selling. Disneyland's 2025 Season of the Force event is scheduled to run from March 28th through May 11th at Disneyland. So if you're going to be in that neck of the woods, I suggest you check it out.
Jumbo, everyone, and welcome to Kilimanjaro Safaris.
Finally today, an update to a baby animal story we've been following. Baby Bakso, the Sumatran tiger cub that was born back in September, has finally made his grand appearance on the Maharaja Jungle Trek last week. If you recall, Disney featured Bakso and his mother in 9 separate live stream videos called Tiger Tuesdays TV. It was really cool to watch the videos and follow Bakso's progress as he grew. It was a pretty big deal for Animal Kingdom because he was the first tiger cub born there in over 7 years. And now he and his mother are together on the Maharaja Jungle Trek for all to see. Ever since word got out that Bakso was on the Jungle Trek, they have been experiencing way more guests than normal, causing very long lines to form at the entrance of the trek. Believe it or not, the Jungle Trek does have a capacity limit. I didn't realize that they even had a capacity limit. But apparently, once the trail reaches capacity, cast members make guests wait behind a rope until the number of people already inside decreases. Apparently, the line has been getting long enough that it goes from the trek entrance all the way back near the entrance to Kali River Rapids. So if you're looking to visit Bakso anytime soon, be sure to arrive early. Or if you don't, be prepared for a wait. My family and I hope to catch a glimpse of the little guy during our spring break trip in March. As always, we will keep you covered here at Mickey, Marvel, and More on all of the Disney animal news, big and tiny. You can always count on us.
Do not pull down on the safety bar, please. I will lower it for you.
So, you've spent weeks, months, or for some people, years planning on your next or possibly first and only trip to one of the Disney resort destinations. Now you're there, and boom, something completely unexpected happens. If these things happen at home, it's an inconvenience, a pain to deal with, but you can get it all worked out. However, if it happens on a Disney theme park trip, it feels like a disaster. And that's what we are going to talk about now in the family chat, Disney disasters. All of these Disney disasters that we're going to talk about today are very specific, and there's a reason for that. They have all happened to us at one time or another on a Disney vacation. Let's bring in my wife, Laura, to discuss our Disney disasters and their fallouts and how we dealt with all of them. Welcome back, Laura.
Hi, happy to be here.
We have had our share of Disney disasters over the years.
Yes, and let me be clear. Are there worse things that could happen? Yes, absolutely. But the things that we're going to talk about today are things that I think are somewhat common disasters. And again, these are not the end of the world, But like you said, they are things that can definitely cause you to be off your game and possibly even, feel like it ruins a part of your trip. And you don't want that to happen.
Right. And let's also be clear that when we use the word disasters, in the grand scope of the real world, these are not disasters.
No.
But when you have spent so much time anticipating a trip and planning for a trip, when a tiny little thing happens that, like I said earlier, at home you can deal with, it seems much larger when you're on a Disney trip.
Yep.
So let's start with probably the most famous one for our family. And I'm going to start it off with a quote from our littlest son. At the time, our littlest son, but still our youngest. Bad news. Daddy lost his wallet.
Yep, a classic.
Oh, man. He said that. How many times did he say that during that evening?
Over the course of those few hours where we were trying to find your wallet frantically in a Disney theme park, he probably said that a dozen times. And I think he was about 3 or 4 at the time. And I mean, he just kept repeating it to every person he saw.
Oh, yes. Just random people on the street. He would just be like, bad news. Daddy lost his wallet. And he'd shake his tiny head and hold it down.
And so, of course, in that particular situation, you had lost your wallet. But this advice applies really to any lost item in a Disney theme park, whether it's a wallet, an umbrella, some other lost item. It happens, and it happens frequently. The magnitude of the disaster, of course, depends on what the item is that's lost.
Right.
With a wallet being one of the more severe items, but how do you deal with that in a Disney theme park? So if you realize right away that you've lost something, of course, go back to the area where you think you lost it and look for the nearest attraction or shop or restaurant or cast member. The way that Disney works with lost items is if a cast member or a guest finds a lost item and turns it into a cast member, the cast member will hold it at the nearest location for a couple of hours to see if somebody returns to the area to pick it up.
Yeah, at the attraction, the restaurant, the shop, wherever this item might have been lost.
Yes. And so there is a designated spot usually within each of these areas. It could be a snack cart. It could be any place where you see a cast member who has some place to store something. They probably are holding that item. And I believe that they will hold it there usually for a couple of hours until it gets sent then to the front of the park to Lost and Found. So your next step, it's been several hours maybe since you've lost the item, or if you've gone to the vicinity and you've checked the shops and attractions and spoken with the cast members in the area and it's still not there, your next step is to go to guest relations. And guest relations will sometimes have some lost items there that they can retrieve for you. So guest relations is generally up at the front of the park by the entrance and exit. Mm-hmm. But even then, if it's been a number of hours or if they don't have the item immediately there, then your next step is to fill out a form with Lost and Found. And I think these days it's an online form for Lost and Found. And you type in information about what it was and where you lost it. And Disney says that they will contact you if they find your item. Let me ask you, Mark, has Disney ever found an item that has gone to Lost and Found that we have filled out an online form for?
No.
No. So just to make sure everybody's expectations are realistic here.
Right. You might get lucky. You might get lucky.
You might, but we have never been lucky to have Disney actually retrieve any of these items. Now, we have had success, going back to the area or location and having a cast member help us kind of canvas the possible holding sites where it could be located. And we have found things occasionally that way.
Yeah, like right at the point of where they were lost.
Yes, but it seems like once it goes into the great Disney Lost and Found, it's lost to the ages.
Yeah, Daddy lost his wallet. Bad news. Daddy lost his wallet. And the funny thing about that is Parker has continued that tradition as he's gotten older to constantly point out all the mistakes I make on a daily basis.
Well, there's a teenager for you.
Right.
So I will say this, if the item that you lose while you are in a park is a critical item, for example, baby food or, reading glasses, tell a cast member, and sometimes they can give you a voucher for a replacement item. Again, if it's something critical, in particular, if it's something that maybe they don't sell in a Disney store. So, for example, in the baby food example that I just gave you, the baby care centers do stock some baby food items. And again, if you've lost your diaper bag or, baby food, I believe they will give you a voucher to go to the baby care center, and they'll give you a couple of essentials to get you through until you can get back to the resort or get to a store to replace the items that you've lost.
Yeah, and that's another thing to keep in mind. If you have a small child, a baby, and you go to the baby care center, they do have items for sale.
Yes.
So they do sell things. These aren't just like, things that they give away. They do have baby food and diapers and some passies and bottles for sale. But yes, you take that voucher there and they'll give you something to help you get through.
On a related topic, if you lose something in a hotel room,
Oh boy.
and that's happened to us. Sad story. Our oldest child's favorite blanket when he was a baby. We took it with us on vacation.
Binky.
Yes. It was in the sheets and covers when housekeeping came to change the linens, and it was gone. So similar process, we called the front desk. We filled out a lost and found form, but unfortunately, Binky was never to be seen again.
Oh, it was the duo of Binky and Covey, Zachary's prized possessions. And it was a tiny yellow baby blanket that he had had since he was born, but it got wrapped up into the sheets and it was never seen or heard from again. He was heartbroken. I
think we all were heartbroken.
I will tell you this on a side note. For a very long time after that trip, I scoured the internet and eBay and all of the for sale sites to try to find a replacement for that blanket. And to this day, every once in a while, when I go down a rabbit hole, I will sometimes look in that hole for that blanket. I have no idea what I would do if I bought it now, but I think it's just that little part of my heart that just wants to find that and reunite Binky and Covey, because we still have Covey. I'm sorry, I got off on a tangent there on you. So what do you do if you've got a lost child, or in this case, a lost parent?
Right. I think that's the thing that does scare a lot of people when they're thinking about a Disney trip with a small child. What happens if the kid gets lost or the parent gets lost?
Well, that's what the cast members refer to it as, a lost parent.
That's right. And it's thankfully never happened to us, but
gosh.
It has happened to friends of ours.
Yep.
And it's terrifying when it happens, but Disney is well prepared for it.
Definitely.
Because it does happen there fairly frequently. So the best advice if parents and kids get separated is stay where you are. When you realize the kid is gone, don't go, walking around looking for the kid. Stay put. Flag down a cast member. Let them know what's happened. If you have another adult in your group, maybe have the second adult go out and, get the cast member or do some looking for the child. But one parent needs to stay exactly where they are when the kid went missing.
Right.
The cast member will ask for some details about your child, their age, their height, their hair color, what they're wearing. I know that there are lots of parents that sometimes will wear the same color as either all of their kids or their youngest child, same color t-shirt.
Sometimes they have matching t-shirts. Exactly.
Sure. If you don't want to go so far, though, as to have matching t-shirts, I will say I've done that in the past with our littlest kid. I would just wear the same color shirt so that, in the event that he went missing and I was maybe a little bit frazzled and panicked, I could remember what he was wearing based on the color of my own shirt.
Or if he's nearby, he could see that color and then identify you quickly in a crowd.
So what happens then once you've given your information to the cast member is they essentially put out an APB to other cast members that goes out over all of the radios that all Disney employees carry. So it is all employees, your security guards, your back of house people, your shop workers, restaurant workers, attraction workers, character handlers, ride attendants. It goes out to everyone.
The characters themselves.
And everyone is on the lookout for this child until parents and child can be reunited. And in the case of our friends, it wasn't very long that the child was located. They were reunited. But boy, in those few minutes, it can sure be terrifying.
It's one thing if you are at a grocery store, or you're at Target, and your kid, kind of gets separated from you. That seems scary, but it's going to be okay. But in a large place like a Disney theme park, it can be very scary. Also of note, Disney does have the ability to make announcements over their speakers, like throughout all the park. And they don't do it very often, and they only do it in the case of where they've got to empty the park quickly or whatever. But I have heard them one time do it, and it was for a lost child. So I just thought that, they do have the power to do that in an extreme case. And I am quite sure that lost parent, as they call them, was found. So what about an illness? What if you are down and out in the happiest place on earth?
I know, that's the worst. And it's certainly happened to us before.
Oh, boy.
Where somebody has gotten sick on vacation. I think we've all had our turn with it, except for maybe you.
Don't say that out loud. You're going to, because spring break is right around the corner, and I don't want to take that back.
Sorry about that. I won't mention it. So if you happen to get sick while you're in the theme parks, or you have a scrape or a minor injury, go to the first aid center. There are first aid stations located in all of the parks. They're designated on the maps. You can always ask a cast member, and the cast members can direct you where to go. These first aid stations are staffed by nurses that can offer first aid care, wound care, medicines, free of charge. For minor things. If it's something that requires something more serious, then they will call a medic or make sure that you get the medical attention that you need. But it's a nice place to go. These are usually very nice, comfortable areas. They're air conditioned. They have comfortable chairs. There are usually activities and TVs with Disney cartoons to keep the kids occupied while you're dealing with whatever medical disaster is happening at the moment. And there's usually cups of water there. And it's a nice way to kind of take a moment, reset, get yourself together before you head back out into the parks. So if illness happens while you're at the hotel, and that's happened to us before, someone wakes up in the middle of the night with an illness, the gift shop hotels have a good variety of basic over-the-counter medicines available for purchase. If it does happen to be the middle of the night and the gift shops aren't open, ask at the front desk. Sometimes they do have the ability to get you some very basic meds just to get you through the night. If not, there are medicine delivery services, and we've used those in the past, again, with sick kids. Disney, the front desk, again, can let you know what services are available to deliver. And there are actually delivery services available both for prescription and non-prescription medications. So Disney, again, customer service there is top-notch, and they are always, willing to help you get through whatever kind of medical issue may be going on.
I think the worst thing that ever happened to us was probably your illness that time. We were at the Pop Century, and I recall you had to stay in the hotel for a couple of days, and the boys and I went out. And I remember after that trip, you're like, you know what? I don't want to go back to the Pop Century for a while, because you had studied the inside of that hotel room for 48 hours straight, and you were done with the Pop Century.
Yeah, nothing against the Pop Century. It's a lovely place, but once you've been sick there and, it's just sort of had bad memories.
We truly didn't go back there for a few years.
We did not.
So what about things that, much like an illness, you have zero control over: the weather.
Yeah. So, one of the most extreme examples is a hurricane. And in a prior episode of Mickey, Marvel, and More, we talked about what happens with a Disney trip when there's a hurricane that's on the way.
It's because we were just about to go and they had just had a hurricane. So there was a lot of information that was floating around the internet about it.
Yeah, the main thing there is just be prepared to be flexible and possibly reschedule your trip. But let's talk about what happens when you have a much more minor weather condition while you're in the parks. And usually that's a thunderstorm or other severe weather, which is pretty common in Florida in particular.
The deluge.
So I think one of the strategies that we've employed when you're caught in the middle of a thunderstorm is try to ride it out in a safe location. Spend some extra time lingering in a shop, or maybe go to a counter service restaurant and get a drink and a snack and just be prepared to sit there for a while and rest. We've tried the strategy of running back to the bus or running to the car. And how's that worked out for us, Mark?
It has not worked out well. And as a matter of fact, this is a callback to bad news. Daddy lost his wallet, because Parker, to this day, will point out that during one of our worst episodes of trying to get to the bus stop during a downpour, was he knew where the car was, and I thought I knew where the car was, but of course he was right, and he has not let me forget that to this day, because we were soaked. And it wasn't just like it was a little bit of rain. It came down so fast it flooded the parking lot. We were up to our ankles in water.
Yeah.
Plus, it was at Animal Kingdom.
Yes.
We were so far away from our car, we had to use the little tram. And when we were on the tram, the rain was coming down so hard. With the speed of the tram, it felt like little tiny needles were sticking in us.
Yeah, it was miserable. And unfortunately, the fallout from being soaked lasted for several more days, because we were soaked and then we got in the car and then the car seats got soaked and they didn't dry out.
We were leaving the next day.
Yeah. So we had wet seats on the way home. Of course, our clothing was soaked. Our shoes were soaked. Socks were soaked. It was just miserable. So back to my original advice.
Right.
If you find yourself in the middle of a thunderstorm, don't try to outrun it. Don't try to run through it unless you're cool with getting totally soaked. Just linger and enjoy. Linger and enjoy.
Well, that has caused us to implement a brand new plan that we have done ever since that trip, which is bring an extra pair of shoes.
Yes.
Because that has turned out to be like a lifesaver. Because no matter what kind of shoes you have, they truly don't dry out in 12 hours.
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse than putting that squishy shoe on the next day.
Right.
So we've been bringing extra shoes.
And even if you do come prepared with umbrellas or ponchos, like you said, your feet and shoes do get soaked still, just because the volume of rain is so heavy. Let's talk for a minute about those umbrellas and ponchos.
Sure.
Are they available for purchase in the parks?
Yes, they are, for a somewhat nominal fee.
Right. Well, it's $10 for a kid's poncho and it's $12 for an adult's, and they are fine. But the strategy that we've employed for years is actually buying those really cheap camp ponchos that they sell at Walmart and a lot of other places. They are $1. They are very, very small, and they are small enough that you can put them every day in your park backpack or even in a pocket, and they're just there when you need them.
If you don't need them, they're there. But when you do need them, they can save your life.
That's right.
And they're cheap enough that you can just throw them away when you're done with them.
Yep. I also tend to bring a mini umbrella. And when I say mini, they do make some really subcompact umbrellas that are only about 5 or 6 inches long. And they can fit in the bottom of a backpack. And in a situation where it's pouring down and you do have to go from point A to point B, man, it's nice.
We will point out that those mini umbrellas are really only intended for one person, because I generally prefer an umbrella to the poncho, because the ponchos make me very hot and sweaty because I feel like I'm like sweltering in a little plastic Tupperware container. So I will generally use the umbrella.
Yeah. It's a matter of preference. The other thing I will say for the ponchos that you purchase at Disney, they don't really fold up
Nope.
well for a second use, and they're a little too heavy and a little too bulky to carry with you from day to day. So I've found that those Disney ponchos that you buy in the park really are not a good investment.
Right. So let's talk about a few other smaller Disney disasters that some have happened to us, some have not. But what about a reservation letdown?
Yeah, nothing's more disappointing than when you go to make a dining reservation or a hotel reservation and you find out that the location that you've got your heart set on is all full. The advice that I would give is check back closer to your trip, check back frequently. Those things do change. Reservations do open up. And actually, we've had some pretty good luck getting same day reservations. Now, I'm not talking about walk up. I'm not talking about just walking up to
Right.
the restaurant at dinner time and asking for a table. But say around 10 o'clock or 11 a.m. looking for a dinner reservation, we've had pretty good luck with finding those kind of places open up on the fly.
100%. We've gotten some pretty good restaurant reservations day of, if you hit them in the early morning, early afternoon time, because people cancel throughout the day. So yeah, this checking for a reservation definitely applies to restaurants. You can get them day of. The hotel reservations, you just have to keep checking back. So what about a missed lightning lane?
So the cast member at the particular attraction does have a little bit of discretion to let you in late if you miss your window. But I've found that at least recently, they tend to be a little more strict about those things.
Because you're paying for them now.
Yeah. So they, there would have been a day where I would have said, oh, don't worry about it. If you miss your window, just come back whenever and they'll let you in. Not necessarily true. But what I have found is that if you go to guest relations and you explain to them, what's happened with your missed lightning lane, or, we had a situation once where we had purchased individual lightning lanes for Rise of the Resistance.
Oh yeah, right.
And it had been down for mechanical problems during our scheduled time. And it was going to be our last day at Hollywood Studios. And so we were there until park close. I think the ride went back up 10 minutes before the park closed. But by that point, we had already moved on because we had assumed that it was going to be shut down for
We
the
already
rest of the
headed back
night.
to the exit.
But we went to guest relations. We explained to them the situation, and they refunded that individual lightning lane for us, no problem.
Yeah, because I believe we were going home the next day.
Yes.
So they do have some leeway at the attraction if you've missed it because of weather, downtime, eating at a restaurant. They were slow. They got behind. So they can give you a little bit of leeway, but they're not as free with it as they used to be. And you can get refunds under certain circumstances. In general, guest services really try to do everything they can to help you. Okay, so what about one more pain point that could happen during a Disney vacation? Something we call souvenir sadness.
Wah, wah.
What happens in those scenarios? What are we talking about, souvenir sadness?
Well, we're talking about the souvenir that you just purchased, and then you find out that it's broken or you lost it right away.
Right.
That's happened with the kids more than it has us. But I mean, I think we've all had an experience where we've bought something and then taken it back and the next day found a rip in it or found that it stopped working. The new plushie that was purchased got ripped. The sunglasses that were just bought got sat on.
Right.
The ice cream cone that was just purchased got dropped on the ground.
Plop.
Disney is great about doing what's called a make good. So if you have that situation with the spilled ice cream or the knocked over box of popcorn, just go back to the place where you bought it. I think it helps if you bring, the empty popcorn bucket or the cone that is missing the ice cream and just explain to them what happened. Usually they will give you a replacement, no charge, no questions asked.
Or perhaps the child's very sad little face.
That's right.
That will usually open all kinds of doors for you.
Similar thing with a souvenir item that you've purchased. If you take it to another store that sells that item, it doesn't even have to be the same store
Right.
that you purchased it from. Particularly if you have the receipt, they can either give you a refund or a replacement. If you bring the broken item, if you no longer have the receipt, they'll typically do a like kind
Yeah,
exchange.
if they carry the same thing, they'll just exchange it for you. All of the merchandise locations act as one. So
That's
if you
right.
have something you just need to return because it ended up not fitting, you don't have to go back to the same store. You can go to any merchandise location. You can even go to the gift shop at your hotel.
That's right.
And they will do the refund for you. So my hope was that maybe by discussing our Disney disasters, we could help others deal with it when it happens to them and maybe make them not so, what is it?
Disastrous.
Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next time.
Don't touch the Nemo!
He touched the butt.
Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Mickey, Marvel, and More. And a big thank you to Laura for hanging out with me in the family chat and talking about vacationing and dealing with Disney disasters. Okay, guys, now that explosion sound effect went way too much the other way. I'm beginning to think we need to have ourselves a production meeting after the show. Hey, after the show, while we're having that meeting, make sure you check out the show notes with links to all the stories we talked about today, as well as links to all of our socials. While you're there, why not click on the link and send us a message, idea, or resume to join our production team at Mickey, Marvel, and More, all one word, at gmail.com. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, my name is Mark, and this has been Mickey, Marvel, and More. If you didn't, my name is Farmer McGee, and you've been listening to Cow Milking, Episode 15, Your Cow's Teat and You. Okay, guys, that had to be on purpose. We are definitely going to have that meeting now. Oi, we'll see you next time. Hey, have you guys ever seen that old Warner Brothers cartoon where Bugs is the animator and he spends the whole cartoon messing with Daffy? That's what this feels like.